there has to be a way for the algorithms or powers that be would have you to figure out a way to, if you do play copywritten material of another person, you should still be able to monetize your channel. And assuming, not that you're just ripping somebody else's content, putting it on your channel and trying to make money off of it. I mean, if you do, even play background music, or you want to speak about a lyric in a song or a scene from a movie, whatever it is, maintain that video monetized for that creator and whatever it is that they're breaking down or creating or showing. But the percentage of the video that's playing the copywritten music, like let's say I play 10% of the video, I'm speaking about something and 10% of it playing a clip that I'm referring to, then take 10% of the money that my video generates and give it to that content creator. So it's a win-win for everyone, I feel, instead of no money being made. What up, folks? What's going on? Welcome to the Spun Today podcast, the only podcast that is anchored in writing, but unlimited in scope. I'm your host, Tony Ortiz, and I appreciate you listening. This is episode 200 of the Spun Today podcast, and in this episode, I will speak about watching the hilarious stand-up comedy special from a comedian whose perspective I really appreciate, which is Brian Simpson. His latest comedy special, Live from the Mothership, which is actually the first released special that was shot at Joe Rogan's club in Austin. I'll also speak about watching the movie Roadhouse, not the original, but the remake, not sure what the proper terminology is there, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and the acting debut of UFC superstar Conor McGregor. And last but not least, I'll speak about participating in this year's five-borough bike tour here in New York City. Did I complete it? Did I not? Stick around to find out. But first, before we jump into the episode, here is a very quick way that you can help support this show if you so choose. Your support means a ton. I really appreciate it. Motivates me to continue putting out these episodes, sharing my thoughts and ideas and takes on things, and as often as possible through the myopic lens of writing and creativity, wherever possible. And I truly hope that you gain something from it, even if it's just help with passing the time while doing a mundane task on your end. So thank you. Here is one quick way you can help support the Spun Today podcast, and then we'll jump right into the episode. You can help support the Spun Today podcast by shopping my merch section. Go to spuntoday.com/support and navigate to the merch section. Here you'll find the iconic Podcast vs. Anybody tee, which comes in many different color schemes and all different sizes. There are a bunch of other designs available as well, including writing-themed shirts, cycling shirts, and the classic Dominican escudo, and much, much more. And if t-shirts aren't your thing, all designs also come in pullover hoodies, zip-up hoodies, sweatshirts, and tank tops. You can also shop the Spun Today coffee mugs, which has the Spun Today logo on one side and the tagline that I end every episode with on the other, which is start taking steps in the general direction of your dreams. Once again, for all Spun Today merch, go to spuntoday.com/support and navigate to the merch section. Brian Simpson's latest comedy special, Live from the Mothership. This is the first full special that I've seen of Brian Simpson's. I saw another, I think it was a half hour, or maybe it was one of those 15-minute ones where it was like so-and-so presents, like Bill Burr presents or Dave Chappelle presents, Tiffany Haddish presents, and then there's a slew of comics that they put on and use their cachet or leverage or actual money that Netflix gave to them to push out comics that they want to put on. It was one of those, if I'm not mistaken. I just don't remember if it was a 15-minute or a half hour. But I saw his portion of that special, which was hilarious and has one of my all-time favorite jokes in it, just because of the clever writing and metaphor and wordplay in it, which I'll circle back to in a bit. But this latest one, Live from the Mothership, is his first full hour special that I've seen. I don't know if it's his first actual hour, but it's definitely the first one that I've seen. And I was put on to Brian Simpson via podcasts, which is how I'm put on to most comedians that I find out about or that I'm into. He's done You Might Be Drunk with Mark Normand and Sam Morril. He's done Stabby's World. He's done Rogan. And since I'm so into podcasts and I listen to so many different types, podcasts are usually the doorway for me into new content or new people creating content. So I'm into stand-up comedy, but I don't, randomly scroll through Netflix for different comedy specials, for example. But if I hear a comic on a podcast I had never heard of before, which has happened countless times, and I'm into their perspective on things, get to know a little bit more of who they are, where they come from, so on and so forth, and I like them, then I'm, maybe I'll like their content. Let me check it out. And then I'll start watching their specials and stuff like that. Same thing with music. I'm usually not into who's the latest, who's who. Like anybody that knows me knows that I still have the Eminem Show, Stillmatic, Blueprint, and Gaventuras, We Broke the Rules on repeat. But when I hear of an artist or I see an interview, I watch an interview on Matt Hoffa or on Vlad or Rory and Mal or Joe Budden or even Breakfast Club sometimes, I'm like, oh, this artist seems cool. Let me check them out. That's how I got into Russ and Joyner Lucas. But I digress. Point is, that's how I found this comic, Brian Simpson. And like I mentioned in the intro, it's the first special filmed at Joe Rogan's new comedy club, which is the Mothership. And I guess it's not so new anymore. It's been open for over a year now. And something interesting about Rogan's club that I've heard, comics opine on and stuff during different pods is that he set it up so that every set of every comic that works out there or does shows or whatever can be recorded. He's always been a proponent of that for younger comics. Like advice that he would give them is, record yourself visually if you can. Hire a camera guy just to film your sets so you can rewatch them back and then, see things that you did right, see things that you did wrong, and improve on them. And if that's not feasible, definitely, just on your iPhone on the recorder, press record, put it down so you can listen to things back, because when comics perform sets, a lot of it or most of it, or depending on the comic, but a lot of it is prepared, written, and sprinkled throughout is off the cuff stuff, and bits that materialize just creatively based on how the set is going, some sort of crowd reaction, a different mental pathway the comic decided to go off creatively for whatever reason, and that's called writing on stage. And his advice is always that moments like that, sometimes you forget what it was exactly that set you off in that path and what it was that made a certain bit work, so on and so forth. So all sets are recorded for each of them to have if they want it. What I never knew or gotten clarification on is if it's all video recorded sets or if it's all audio. I'll be interested to know if it is video recorded, if that same mechanism was how the special itself was shot. I know there's usually 3 or 5 or, depending on who special it is and how they would want to shoot it. There's a lot of different cameras and a bunch, I'm sure that I'm definitely not aware of going on in terms of shooting a special and the aesthetics for it and stuff like that. But it would be dope if it's already a preset for special shooting and everything, you know what I mean? Built into it. It'll make the allure of that club and filming at that club even higher than it already is. Because comics definitely seem to love it in terms of the aesthetics and the way it's built and the low ceilings. And you'd obviously have to be a comic to understand the nuances of it, which I am not. But based on all the comics that I listen to, all of which have only said positive things about it, they always say how you can tell the club was built by a comic for comics. So I definitely would be interested to know more about that camera setup there. But anyway, I digress. The hilarious joke that I love from his 15-minute or half-hour special, and I'm going to paraphrase it and also preface it by saying that Brian Simpson is black, so this isn't a racist bit or anything like that. I just wanted to add that context just in case. And I just love the clever metaphor of it. And again, I'm going to paraphrase it, but he says something along the lines of that black people are pennies. And he says legally they're accepted everywhere, but But once you see 4 or 5 of those motherfuckers together, you kind of raise an eyebrow. And he does it with, he's not a very physical comic, but just his facial mannerisms while saying that joke, it just always stuck with me, and I just thought it was super hilarious. But yeah, it's one of my favorite jokes. But going back to this special specifically, I thought it started off slower than I was expecting. He has a very, not monotone, but very laid back, kind of speaks like he's high, slow build type of delivery. But just the first few jokes or bits weren't hitting for me. Not enough to, not the special or anything like that. I just thought there was a hockey stick incline around, after you're a quarter into the special. And then it just kept getting better from there, which I guess is good for retention purposes. And again, it's just my opinion, right? Some other folks, I'm sure, other jokes in the beginning resonated more with them, but here are a few that I thought were great. He had this whole mass shooter chunk, gun rights and stuff like that. And he says that he had this theory that should be verified, and if verified, then this should be implemented. So he says that all mass shooters, they go into schools and supermarkets and so forth, that all of them must have small dicks. And he says that if proven to be true, then all men's dick sizes should be added to their driver's licenses. And that this alone, this historic piece of legislation, of hypothetical legislation, would substantially drop the occurrence of these mass shootings in this country. If a dude is pissed off and goes into a gun store and the clerk there, grabs his ID and, sees the guy's frustrated and stuff like that, and he's asking for an AR-15, the guy could look at his ID and say, sorry, sir, you don't have the girth for an AR-15, but I can offer you this high-end slingshot. I just thought that was fucking hilarious. I'm sorry. Then he has this COVID joke. He has a chunk about COVID. A specific piece of it that I thought was so true was when he says that the only difference between liberals and conservatives in relation to COVID is how long we gave a fuck about COVID for. Then he plays with that for a while, saying, conservatives were over it after like 2 weeks, which is OD, and liberals were over it after 2 years, which is also OD, on the opposite side of that spectrum. And he was like, but ultimately we all arrived at the same conclusion. Grandma needs to stay her ass at home. That's it. And the moral was, don't let these politicians rile you up against each other, as they love to do with everything and anything under the sun, which is the game that they're playing, right? Controversial issues and identity politics and fear mongering and this and that, whatever they can do or say to sway what they want, which is you vote. And then he tagged that bit up with highlighting that dumb people in any situation always start talking first. That's why we get the conspiracies that like 5G caused COVID or all the other random things that we heard the first few weeks when nobody knew anything of what was going on. And he says, stupid is instant and science takes time. That was definitely a good takeaway. Now, my favorite bit or full chunk of the whole special, I won't completely spoiler alert it for you guys, but I do need to highlight a couple points from it because I thought it was just masterfully done and it was fucking hilarious. He goes in on Queen Elizabeth and how he's happy that she died and she was a piece of shit, so on and so forth. Reverse engineers how she became Queen Elizabeth, all while threading in that there are different levels of how good a woman's pussy is. There's a WAP scale, a WAP 1, WAP 2, WAP 3, so on and so forth. And in the special, for the uninitiated, he describes what WAP is. And the way he wove those two stories together was amazing, I thought, was fucking hilarious. And I think this story is true, but I haven't looked too much into it because I kind of want it to be true for the bit. But the bit itself is hilarious as standalone anyway. But he mentions a woman, an American woman, who was married to a pilot. And at the time when, pilots were a big thing, it was like, wow, he's a pilot. And how that woman divorced the pilot and married a millionaire back when that was the highest you can be, like billionaires didn't exist. And that same woman then divorced that millionaire and started messing with King Edward of England. And he describes how the King of England at the time, not sure how it is now, is also the head of the church. And since the Christian church doesn't allow for, or didn't at the time, I think they do now, doesn't, believe in divorce or anything like that, till death do you part, King Edward couldn't officially marry this woman that he was with. So he decided for this woman to vacate his throne. And ultimately it went to his younger brother, who he described as being a cokehead that also had a speech impediment and was completely overwhelmed by the task of being king. And he wound up dying 10 months later. So then the throne defaulted to his teenage daughter at the time, who was Queen Elizabeth. And that's how we got, as he says, stuck with that bitch for like 90 million years or whatever it was. Oh my God, I thought that was hilarious. How sick is that story? And then the last thing I'll say about the special is he has this ending bit about how every guy in the world is at least 5% gay, and describes it as it not being a switch, like an on and off switch. It's more like a dimmer switch. There's a spectrum of gay, and he proves it, in his opinion, in a couple of ways by saying things like how every man loved, the decades-long Marvel Universe movies, Captain America's and Avengers, so on and so forth. And he was like, the whole decade prior, the opinions of so many men would have changed if at the end, instead of Thanos snapping his finger with the glove on the way he did, if he would have done it gaily, like, a round snap going, hey. And then he proves his theory of every man being at least 5% gay by using a proxy that I'm not going to give up because I want you guys to go watch the special, but using a proxy that, if true, if accurate, if it really meant that, and I'm not saying that it does, no Diddy, right? But if this proxy that he uses really meant that, then we absolutely are all at least 5% gay. And I'll leave it there. Brian Simpson's Live from the Mothership. The special is streaming now on Netflix. Check it out. Speaking of music, by the way, from earlier, have you guys been following the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef? It's been so fucking good. As a hip hop fan and a fan of actual battle rap as a subgenre of hip hop. And I mean actual battle rap, like the Smack URL, RBE, KOTD, all the rap leagues. Because I just love getting immersed in the creativity that they bring to the table, the metaphors, the similes, the angles and schemes that they create when they're battling. Some of which I highlight, by the way, in my newsletter at times as a video of the week. If you guys are interested, subscribe completely for free at spuntoday.com/subscribe. But we haven't seen a rap battle beef of this caliber by more mainstream music artists since Jay-Z and Nas. Back again in the Blueprint, Stillmatic, early 2000s phase. And it's been so dope, especially when it's kept on wax, right? When it doesn't spill out over to actual real beef or issues. Even though I did recently see an article that one of Drake's bodyguards got shot or something like that. I don't know if it's related or unrelated, but hopefully unrelated. But as of right now, and I think there's been, 5 to 7 tracks back to back, or from either side rather, cumulative total, however the proper way to say it is. And I think Kendrick has it as of right now. Both have had phenomenal bars, clever. I've just liked more the strategy on the Kendrick Lamar side and how he's more so, aside from giving clever metaphors and impeccable writing as usual, he's taking the I'm a better man than you are angle versus just being a better rapper, while also shitting on his rap ability. And he's been really clever with displaying different rap styles within the same track and across all the tracks that he's put out. And Drake also, on his side, most of his responses have been dope as well. Top tier bars and writing, although I'll always have to put an asterisk to that because, the whole ghostwriting thing. Shout out Quentin Miller. But delivery wise, great as you'd expect. the beats. You know, Drake is always gonna put out the more mainstream type music that you will be able to hear on the radio and in the clubs, versus Kendrick Lamar's, which is gonna be more artsy. But Kendrick kind of flipped it with one of the tracks that he put out. I think it was the Not Like Us track, which was more of a could get radio play and club type record. And in all battles, whether it's mainstream hip hop or, you know, even in battle rap, one of the biggest currencies is exposing things about your opponent. How Pusha T, for example, pretty much demolished Drake with the bombshell reveal of the fact that he had a son that he was hiding from the world. And this is information that, and you hear it a lot more on an actual battle rap level, how people, you know, pay people for information on their opponents. Some people are just cloud chasing and want to give information, and once they know that two people are battling, they reach out to one side or the other and want to spill the beans on something or put them onto some inside information or an angle that may not be known that can be used. And it's not dissimilar to how it takes place here at this top tier level. But a genius thing that Drake did, if it actually is that he did this, was the fact that he fed information to one of Kendrick Lamar's supposed sources. He fed him information that Drake had another kid that he wasn't letting the world know that he has and is, you know, not being a father to, etc. An 11-year-old daughter. And Kendrick took that information and ran with it, included it in his Meet the Grams response. And then Drake comes back with Family Matters and pretty much says that, you know, you took the bait, you fucked up, you didn't even verify your sources, that was fake, I put that out there just to make you look stupid out here, etc., etc. So if that's true, and that's not just Drake trying to, you know, cover his ass and say that it's fake news, even when it's not, but if that's true, that was like the chess game of it that he was playing, and, you know, feeding the false information to see if he would take the bait, that is dope. That's genius right there. But again, in my opinion, Kendrick's in the lead. There was also a recent post that I saw that Kendrick was about to come out with a track, another one, because according to some of the bars he's put out in his previous tracks, he has 10 total locked and loaded waiting to release them. But apparently, allegedly, Drake's camp got wind of the content of the one that Kendrick was about to release and supposedly stepped back from the battle and, you know, is waving the white flag, quote unquote. No idea if that's true yet. That just recently broke. And shout out, by the way, to Knox Hill, who has this YouTube reaction channel to hip hop in general, music in general, but definitely has been taking a deep dive into these rap beefs and helping break down the bars and stuff like that. Does a phenomenal job. I'll link to one of his videos in the episode notes for you guys to check out, which also highlighted, I think, the greatest W of this entire situation. He highlighted a tweet from Daily Rap Facts that said, quote, Kendrick Lamar has officially removed all copyrights from his content creators' reaction videos. This allows them to make money from their content. So for example, when somebody does a reaction video and they play music on YouTube and stuff like that, it can have millions and millions of views or hundreds of thousands of views, whatever, and they can't make money off of it because that's not their copyrighted written content. That's not their content, for example, if they play a song or something like that, and they get flagged and their channels could be taken down as well if they get copyright strikes against them. But at the very least, they cannot monetize that content, regardless of the amount of views that it has. At least not directly, right? You can, you know, if you're getting a lot of eyeballs, you can try to sell merch and stuff like that, and that's how the folks that have those types of channels attempt to monetize. But they're obviously creating something of value that people enjoy and watching and not getting paid for it. Which is, for example, why I stopped adding. I used to, back in the day, put outro music or play music in the background while actual songs and shit while I record outros, but I stopped doing that for that reason, because episodes kept getting flagged and taken down, so on and so forth. So definitely not worth it, at least for the type of content that I do. But Knox Hill highlighted this tweet, which is dope because all the content and all the back and forth that's going on with all the reaction videos and stuff like that. Now those content creators that are helping the general public, myself, you know, break down bars and this means that because of X, Y, and Z, and just doing deep dives and analysis on all the lyrics are able to be paid for that content directly. And I thought that's dope. Definitely a dope move from Kendrick, because it adds credibility to folks that put this type of content out. It's also a keen recognition from Kendrick's perspective of these people are just helping popularize my shit. So why would I want them to get, copyright strikes and potentially have their videos taken down if they're speaking about my creative content? That's a, net positive. And I've said this in the past, there has to be a way for the algorithms or powers that be, what have you, to figure out a way to, if you do play copywritten material of another person, you should still be able to monetize your channel. And assuming, not that you're just ripping somebody else's content, putting it on your channel and trying to make money off of it. I mean, if you do, even play background music, or you want to speak about a lyric in a song or a scene from a movie, whatever it is, maintain that video monetized for that creator and whatever it is that they're breaking down or creating or showing. But the percentage of the video that's playing the copywritten music, like let's say I play 10% of the video, I'm speaking about something and 10% of it playing a clip that I'm referring to, then take 10% of the money that my video generates and give it to that content creator. So it's a win-win for everyone, I feel, instead of no money being made by anyone, which also removes the incentive of continuing to want to create that type of content, at least the financial incentive. It's all just going to be passion driven. But yeah, why can't it be broken down that way? I don't know. If somebody does know, hit me up, let me know. But yeah, who do you guys think is up in this battle? This epic 2024 battle of Kendrick Lamar versus Drake. Roadhouse, the remake of an original 1989 movie starring Patrick Swayze, which I wish I would have seen, because I plan to watch it. I just haven't watched it yet, but it would have added probably some important context to this little recap and review of watching the modern version. But the 2024 version starring Jake Gyllenhaal, I thought was a very fun watch. Here is the official synopsis. Ex-UFC fighter Dalton takes a job as a bouncer at a Florida Keys Roadhouse, only to discover that this paradise is not all it seems. And as we like to do here on the Spun Today podcast, let's shout out the writers, the ones who make it all possible. Roadhouse was written by Anthony Bagarazzi, Chuck Mondry, and R. Lance Hill. Shout out to each of the writers that put this together. One more, my bad, I missed it. Miss Hillary Henkin is also credited. But yeah, again, knowing nothing of the original movie, and you don't need to going into this one, it's not like a sequel to it or anything like that, it's just a remake. It's really fun to watch. If you like action, has really good fighting scenes, car chases, boat chases, it's funny. Jake Gyllenhaal is just a phenomenal actor. He's one of my favorite actors. So I like watching whatever he puts out. Nightcrawler, Donnie Darko, back in the day, throwback. The Covenant, which my brother put me onto. Have I done a breakdown of The Covenant? I saw it with my brother and I saw it. I think I rewatched it again, or planned to rewatch it again. I know I saw it at least twice. But he's just a great, very engaging actor, and definitely carries this movie. He's the lead and kind of plays this very solitary, stoic, almost serial killer-like vibes you get from him. That's just like a vagabond and he's going through town and just has these backyard brawl type fights for money because he has this past or this mystique about him from the past that they keep teasing throughout the movie. And spoiler alert, it's revealed that he winds up killing someone that was a friend of his when he was in the UFC. So he stopped doing that and just takes these cash fights, last man standing type deals that aren't sanctioned or televised or anything like that. Kind of like human cockfighting, but for real. And this lady that owns this Roadhouse bar, lounge, restaurant place in the Florida Keys offers him a job to go and be the security guard there. And he turns it down at first, but then he needs the money, winds up doing it. And people in the town, and especially that work there and stuff like that, it's a very small town, start liking him because there's this local thugs that always terrorize the place, and he pretty much squashes all that shit by fucking all of them up. And it's just taking on anyone and everyone that comes his way. It's unrealistic, obviously, in that sense, but he has this kind of superhero-like mystique about him, where he just beats up like 5 or 6 bikers at once. It so happens that the reason why these bikers are always terrorizing this bar is that they want to get the girl to sell it, and it's been in her family for years. She doesn't want to sell, or not they, their employer, which happens to be this more nefarious mafioso type character that wants to tear the place down and build hotels and resorts and shit like that because it's like on the waterfront. And then that dude's father, which is the real ringleader, is in prison, but left it to his son to take care of this. The son can't get it done, so the father employs Conor McGregor, or someone named Knox rather, played by Conor McGregor in Conor McGregor's acting debut, which he did okay, not great acting wise, but it helped that he was playing a caricature of himself basically. But I thought it was good. It definitely wasn't bad, and it was cool to see Conor too in a big movie like this. You know, being a UFC fan, being a Conor fan, I think that's dope for him. So he gets employed to pretty much get rid of Jake Gyllenhaal and finish the job of getting this girl to sell. And there's epic fight scenes between them two, between Dalton, which is Jake Gyllenhaal's character, and Knox, Conor McGregor's character. Even at the end, or towards the end, there's a scene where Gyllenhaal's character is stabbing Conor McGregor with knives, but he keeps pulling them out and stabbing him multiple times. They both have this thing, which I don't even know if it's a real thing, but you know how people have different physical attributes. I have heard that some people feel pain as pleasure. It isn't exactly that, but it's that they both are very desensitized to pain. So it takes a lot to hurt them, which is why they're so good at fighting, etc. So their fight scenes are just brutal, and neither one lets up. Hence the repeated stabbings. But it was sick how they did it. And there's a great line that Jake Gyllenhaal's character delivers that I thought was worth sharing and absolutely applicable to creative pursuits, which is patience and a keen interest in the results. That's all it takes. I just thought that was a dope line that rings true to me. I would also add or remove the fact that that's all it takes, but patience and a keen interest in the results is all it takes. I would just sprinkle in hard work throughout that. But I like the sentiment behind that. Patience and a keen interest in the results. Anyway, if you guys want to listen to a dope pod where both Jake Gyllenhaal and Conor McGregor are on, you know, speaking about the movie and a lot of the behind the scenes and making the movie, they were on Armchair Expert with Dak Shepard. I'll link to that in the episode notes for you guys to check out if you're interested. But yeah, the movie itself, a dope, entertaining watch. It was a fun watch, and I recommend it. Roadhouse, the 2024 version, streaming now on Amazon Prime. The 2024 Bike New York 5-borough bike tour. I've told you guys about the 5-borough before, especially the debacle that happened the year before last, I believe it was, when my bike tires deflated overnight and just wouldn't take air the morning of. And we wound up, me and my boy Pablo, that do these tours together, wound up just going to a bagel shop in Brooklyn instead of doing the 5-borough. But for those of you who don't know, it is cycling season for myself. It's usually around the time where I start bike riding and start training up for doing a cycling marathon, a bike marathon. And me and Pablo, shout out to Pablo, Spun Today alum, either together or sometimes separately, we'll train every weekend or every other weekend for a month or so or two prior to one of these marathons to get our miles up, as you do. And for those of you who may not be familiar, the 5-borough is a really cool, probably one of my favorite ones of these cycling marathons. And it's definitely the longest. It's 40 miles and you cycle through, it's definitely the biggest also. It's like 33,000 cyclists, I think, signed up this year. But you cycle through all 5 boroughs of New York City, hence the name 5-borough. You start in Lower Manhattan. And by the way, they close a bunch of streets down, a bunch of bridges and tunnels and highways just for the cyclists. So they close it down from car traffic, so you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And you get to ride down from Lower Manhattan, past the Freedom Tower, through Radio City. You ride through Central Park, go up to Harlem, cross over to Astoria. You get to ride over the 59th Street Bridge. You go through Brooklyn. You ride through the FDR. You get to ride through the BQE. And ultimately you cross the Verrazano, which is at the very end, into Staten Island, and then ride back towards the ferry area, which is where you either start or finish. And by that I mean everybody starts in Lower Manhattan, but some people, drive in the morning to Lower Manhattan and try to find parking around there, and then do the full bike tour. And then afterwards, after they're done, hop on a ferry back to Lower Manhattan to get their car and then bounce, or a subway or whatever. Alternatively, which is what we do now, and what we have done the last couple times. The first time we did it that way, but now we, in the morning, drive to Staten Island, park there very close to the ferry, hop on the ferry in the morning with our bikes and a shitload of people that are all doing the same thing, and ride it to Lower Manhattan. So we, start the marathon, finish up, and then we end in Staten Island. So then we just go to the car and bounce from there, instead of having to wait for the ferry at the end. We definitely prefer it that way. I recommend that way, because there's gonna be a shitload more people at the end trying to get on the ferry to get back to Manhattan. Plus you're tired from just cycling fucking 40 miles, especially over that steep incline of the Verrazano Bridge. But yeah, it was a dope ride. It's really cool to take in the city that way. I've said in the past, just from cycling in general, that you see things and notice stores or houses or areas, you take it in differently than you would walking or driving, which is an aspect of cycling but especially when in an occasion like this, a once in a year occasion where they just lock everything down to car traffic, and you get to ride through a tunnel in the FDR, and everybody's, woohooing and screaming and shit on your bikes, and you're just taking over the whole side of the highway, and then the cars on the other side that are going in the opposite direction, they're honking and cheering people on and stuff. It's pretty dope. And I had a personal goal this year, try not getting off my bike at all. And by at all, I mean like to walk a certain distance or up the inclines of the bridges, etc. But everybody, gets off in the rest stops or gets off to stretch on the side and then get back on your bike and keep going. So I had that personal goal, especially after last year's Hudson Valley that I told you guys about, where in the last 5 miles or so, 5 or 6 miles, my quads just locked up and I had to fucking call in reinforcements to pick me up and take me to the finish line, which fucking sucked. And I'm very happy to say that I didn't get off at all and cycled over every bridge and steep incline. Queensboro, at the Verrazano, at the steep ass, long ass BQE stretch, none of it. Cycled throughout it all. And I had a slightly different game plan this time, which worked. And two things that actually helped me. One, in the past, when I get towards the end of the BQE, I would start cycling fast before getting on the Verrazano. Cycling faster, trying to gain momentum to try to ride that momentum up the incline of the Verrazano, and I would burn out. Only the very first time that I did the five-borough, I was able to get through it without issue. The next time or two after that, I had to walk across the Verrazano with the bike because I was just burnt out. But this time, by not doing that and stopping on the BQE a couple times, go a mile or two, stretch, go an exit or two, stretch, get off the bike, drink some water, then resume after. Doing that, I was well rested in air quotes, after doing fucking 30 something miles at that point. But I was able to take on the incline without issue. The other thing that helped me a lot was, while you're going through, there's some streets where it's blocked off to cars, the full avenue, but then the cross streets are not. So they stop the cyclists every once in a while to let people walk across the street, or let the cars that are passing by that street go. And right before the Queensboro, one of the marshals that were there, he kept saying, and I was like, oh shit, let me try that. He kept saying, when you're cycling up the Queensboro, just use gear 1 or gear 2. Otherwise, you're burning energy for no reason. And I've always taken the opposite approach. I try to, because if you don't know bikes, the gear 1 is the slowest you'll go, but it's the smallest revolutions in terms of the cycling chain. Gear 8 is the biggest revolution, so it gives you, so one pedal gets you further when you're on gear 8 versus if you're on gear 1, one pedal doesn't do much. But the thing is, you want it on the lower gears when you're going uphill, because you don't want to give yourself even more of resistance when going up. You want the least resistance possible, which would be gear 1. And this marshal was saying, just use gear 1 or gear 2. Don't overdo it. You're just wasting energy for no reason and no additional gains. Just use gear number 1 or gear number 2. And I was like, I've never done that. I always start on 8 to try to get the most out of it. And then I go down to 7, then I go down to 6, then I go down to 5, and I usually teeter off around 5. But I burn out my quads doing that. And that's what I did with the Verrazano. That's what I've always done with the Queensboro. And this time I was, all right, let me try that. Because my goal is, again, to stay on the bike, pedal through. And when I got to the Queensboro, instead of dropping down from 8 to 5, I dropped it down lower. I dropped it down to 4 or 3 and was able to get through it like that. But then I kept that in mind whenever I was going through any more of the inclines. And I dropped it down definitely on the Verrazano to 3, 2, and then to 1 for the duration of it. And that absolutely worked. So highly recommend if anybody out there is a novice cycler, or even if you've been cycling for a while but just like me had a different approach to it, try that. Definitely worked for me, might work for you. But yeah, it was a dope ride. Looking forward to a few more this year. I'm going to do the Hudson Valley again, as well as the Twin Lights ride. And I'll definitely let you guys know about those once they happen. And as Lil Wayne would say, I'm proud of me. Shout out to Bike New York and the folks that put together the five-borough and all of these tours. And that, folks, was episode 260 of the Spun Today podcast. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen. I really appreciate each and every one of you that do take the time to listen. Your support means a ton. You can check out a lot of my writing on my website, spuntoday.com/free writing. If you want more like introspective, motivational, what's life about type of content, spuntoday.com/short stories. If you want to check out some of my fiction, and of course, spuntoday.com/books. If you want to check out any of the 3 books that I've published, from Make Way for You, which is a collection of tips for getting out of your own way, to Fractal, which is a science fiction time travel novel, to Melted Cold, which is a collection of short stories. Again, thank each and every one of you for taking the time to listen. Here are a few ways you can help support this podcast if you so choose, and I will check you out next time. Peace. What's up, folks? Tony here. I hope you're enjoying the Spun Today podcast as much as I enjoy producing it for you. Here are a few ways you can help support the show. You can support the Spun Today podcast financially by going to spuntoday.com/support. There you will find a couple different ways that you can do just that, some of which will actually not even cost you a dime, such as using my Amazon affiliate link. When you go to spuntoday.com/support, you'll see my affiliate link to Amazon. Click on it and it will take you to Amazon's website, where you can do your shopping like normal. This will not cost you anything extra, but Amazon will pay me for driving traffic to their website. If you'd like to support the podcast more directly, you can do so by becoming a patron at spuntoday.com/support. You'll also find my Patreon link. This is where creators such as myself can be paid directly by patrons like you. You can either make a one-time donation or schedule recurring donations if you so choose. There are also different tiers of support, and depending on which you decide to go with, you'll also receive some perks in return, such as early access to content, free digital copies of my books, free bookmarks, etc. That is, again, by supporting via my Patreon link, available at spuntoday.com/support. Similar to Patreon, at that same location, you'll also find my Ko-fi link as well as my Buy Me a Coffee link. They work very similar to Patreon and are different ways that you can help support the show financially. And last but certainly not least, you have the good old-fashioned PayPal donation button. Any which way that you choose to support is greatly appreciated. It all helps me do more of what I love, which is writing and podcasting. Again, go to spuntoday.com/support. You can also support the Spun Today podcast by rating and reviewing the show wherever it is that you're listening to this episode. I'd really appreciate it because it really does help. Also, follow me on all socials. At Spun Today on X, formerly known as Twitter. At Spun Today on Instagram. And at Spun Today on YouTube, where you'll not only find full-length episodes of the podcast, but also chopped up clips and additional content. And of course, you can follow the Facebook page at facebook.com/Spun Today. Another way you can help support the Spun Today podcast and also upgrade that stale wardrobe of yours is by going to spuntoday.com/support and clicking on the banner for Stitch Fix. Once you do, you'll enjoy a $25 discount to your first purchase. And the way Stitch Fix works is pretty cool. I use it and I've never been disappointed. You'll set up a profile. You'll put in all the sizes for your clothes, as well as all the different brands and types of clothes that you like to wear. It's really simple and intuitive to set up. They'll show you pictures and pretty much give you a thumbs up or thumbs down option on if you would wear something or not. And you get to select all the brands that you already are used to wearing. With this information, there are thousands of passionate, trend-setting stylists will curate a Stitch Fix box for you. They'll send you 5 items that you get to preview before they mail it to you, and you'll get to select based on the image if you like it or not. If not, they'll replace it with something else, and if so, they'll mail it to you absolutely for free. You can try everything on, and you have a few days to send everything back or keep the stuff that you want to keep. Then you can use that $25 credit that I mentioned towards your purchase of those items. Again, to freshen up your wardrobe and also support the Spun Today podcast, go to spuntoday.com/support and click on my affiliate link banner for Stitch Fix and enjoy your $25 credit. Do you want to start your own podcast? Have a great show idea that you want to get out into the masses but don't know quite how to get it from your head out into the world? Well, here's how. Use the podcast host Libsyn. That's who I use to bring the Spun Today podcast to you. And now you can use them the same way. Using the promo code SPUN, S-P-U-N, you can open up your Libsyn account today and get 2 months of free podcast hosting. Here's how it works. Once you record your show, you upload it to your Libsyn account, where you can fill in your episode notes, upload your podcast art, and schedule when you want your episodes to release. Once you do that, Libsyn will take care of the rest. They'll distribute your show to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and all the other podcatchers that you choose, instantaneously and seamlessly. Again, go to libsyn.com and use the promo code SPUN, S-P-U-N, to get 2 months free. Or use the affiliate link that's in the episode notes. Again, that's libsyn.com, promo code SPUN. Take that great podcast idea from out of your head and put it out into the world. And as always, folks, substitute the mysticism with hard work and start taking steps in the general direction of your dreams. Thanks for listening. I love you, Aiden.
I love you, Daddy.
I love you, Grayson.
I love you, Daddy.